Okay, we are live on Facebook. We are here for Spotlight Sunday. So before we get started, let me get everything pulled up and share it in all the right places so everybody can see it, all that good stuff. Get it pinned. I'm
impressed by your tech savvy right now.
I'm so freaking excited to have you on here for real. I'm so excited. I think I said it in the description of this this event, but I got to meet you in New York and it was so awesome.
Love you.
So I'm so excited that you're here. Thank you so much for coming in. And
thank you for having me, girl. I'm so honored. Your group's amazing.
Thank you. I love my group. I love this whole Spotlight Sunday thing anyway, giving everybody the chance to come on, but I've learned so much freaking amazing stuff from so many people in this group and I love it.
I believe that easily.
I love it. I'm having fun with it. Okay, so let's get this pulled up so I can see comments. Let me know if you're here. When you're here, say hi, Jessica and Jillian. Yay, Jillian! I'm so glad you could come live. Okay, so I don't butcher your intro, I will let you just take over real quick and introduce yourself. Tell us what a badass you are.
Oh, thank you. I'm sure you would never butcher it, but thank you. So my name's Sarah Elizabeth Lahoud. Hello, everybody. And yeah, that's my business name. You asked my business name and that's it. Sarah Elizabeth Lahoud. You can find me at myname.com. And I work with creative entrepreneurial women who are feeling frustrated and overwhelmed with basically implementing and starting their creative business from their idea and really help them to implement it. We work on technology and strategy and everything like that so that they can have a real business that they love while having a life that they love. That's it. That's all I do basically all day long.
That's it. Just that tiny little
just
thing.
That and love it and love it and love it and repeat. That's it.
That's awesome. So how did you get started doing that?
Awesome. So you asked me that the other day and I was like, oh, I could tell the short version. And I was thinking about it. And my story usually when I say it goes, well, I started my business when I got fired, but that's actually true, but that's not really the cool part of the story. So originally I created the business from my blog. I started a blog when I moved to Ireland so that my family could keep track of me, honestly, so I wouldn't have to call them all the time. And I was in grad school and I used, obviously you're broke in grad school. So I used the blog and I used a freelance writing business I started to make money, pay rent, etc. And then kind of slowly over time, including a lot of different stories, including getting fired, I basically started coaching people on the things that I knew. I'd done a lot of personal growth work and I'd done a lot of business work and a lot of strategy and I had to pitch to clients and all this other stuff. And so I kind of decided that coaching business sort of made sense. And it was like a natural transition. And quite honestly, at the beginning, it was because it was a better moneymaker than freelance writing. And not only had I worked in the industry for such a long time, and I was really familiar with the online strategy and online messaging and online mindset and personal growth and stuff that was required to run a business. And also that I'd done it myself. I realized, if I'm honest with myself, I'm really great at messaging and helping people translate what they're so good at when they have a client in front of them into their marketing so that it really stands out and allows them to book clients easily. So that's kind of what it ended up being. But ultimately, this was my pretty version of it, is that I discovered that I'm really in business and I remain in business for a lot bigger reason. I mean, I consider my industry not to be the online business industry, but to be anybody who considers it their job or their mission to bring awareness to a pain or a trauma or injustice in the world and provide a space for healing and transformation. That means it could be anybody, like creatives, healers, any coaches. I've worked with actors and stuff before. And my aim is really to participate in that and use business as that medium to allow people to do that. So that's really why I started it. But I didn't start it like that. I really just wanted money and I got fired, and that's the funny version of it.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And I love how articulate you are. Just explaining.
Thank you.
That's something that I struggle with. I can write like a champ, but I just word vomit everywhere when I try to talk. So I love listening to you talk all the time. It's our topic today, talking about communication.
For sure. Yeah, it's my favorite.
To do this. Okay, so before we dive in and you teach us how to speak so eloquently like you do, especially when shit happens that we don't want to happen, I always have to ask everyone, what is the branding question? So what is your definition of branding? What does it mean for you?
You just gave me the biggest idea to add to my presentation. So forgive me while I write that down. So
No, you're good.
my definition of branding, you know, I honestly think one of the reasons I don't know if you agree with this, but one of the reasons we jived originally was because when you talk about branding, I'm like, that's how I feel about business. Is like branding, I'm going to use weird words right now. In my mind is like an embodiment. It's like who you are, no matter the energy of anyone around you, and what your business is, again, no matter the energy of anyone around you, and how you're able to communicate that with or without words so that people can see it. So it's kind of like, well, what are you when the doors are all closed and locked? And can we see that when you open the doors? That's my idea of branding. And so it's definitely, this is where I know we agree. It's beyond colors and it's beyond design and it's beyond your logo and it's beyond even messaging. It's, can someone tell when you walk into a room, like what it is that you're trying to embody?
I love that. Like, I want to steal what you just said. And
well, you're recording it, so feel free.
Yes. It's so good. I love that. That's one of my favorite ones, I think, for sure. Sorry to everyone else, but yours were good too, I promise. Okay, cool. So yeah, so let's dive in. Let's learn some awesome stuff. Sorry, my phone's flashing at me. Let me turn it off. But cool. Yeah, so let's go. How do you want to do this thing?
Well, I'm going to just blab, if I'm honest with you. I don't have a presentation, guys. I'm really sorry. Anytime that I've ever, you know, it's funny you say, Brooke, that you're better when you write. Whenever I have to do something like fancy and, you know, there's not an assistant involved, it always turns to crap just because I'm too lazy and I'm like, oh my God, I have another idea and I want to talk to fast people. So my suggestion, if you guys have them like notebooks or like, you know, type them up or something like that, because I don't have notes for you besides Brooke's obvious recording. So I'm just going to blab.
Okay.
So
I can type some in as we go too.
Okay, cool. Awesome. The killer ones, if there are any. So basically we decided on communication skills, how to handle yourself when shit happens. And this idea came about because a lot of what I teach is kind of falls into two big categories, sort of the strategy around, you know, booking clients, working with clients, you know, putting together your content strategy, and then the messaging. But both of those are really the same thing. It's how are you communicating what it is that you do and how are people hearing it and how are you then responding to it? It's all kind of the same package. And I work with a lot of people who don't have, understandably, tons of sales or sort of communication experience. And so what they find is that their conversations, whether they're sales conversations or even just client comms, are falling flat. Or they're kind of struggling to shift into that, you know, leadership mode when it's required, you know, like that moment when you're like, okay, I think you're good for my program. And, or they're having like, this was the one that you and I were laughing about, Brooke, where they have weird shit happens.
Yeah.
So here's where my examples, two stories for you. One of them's kind of sad. One of them's kind of funny. So when I was freelance writing, I had this client and first thing you should know is that I let her get away with a lot that I wouldn't let people get away with normally. The reason was because she was steady income. She always had projects for me. And she was one of my steadiest clients. Now I let her pay less than required because I was just happy that she was constantly booking. Also, there was all that whole energy that we always talk about, like, oh, could I charge more? And, you know, the conversation we have every time we try to raise our prices. But I did so many projects for her. I mean, really, it was probably thousands. It was probably 20K or more worth of work. And I probably only ever got 5K out of her. Oh, wow. Ultimately, which is a big number, right? But at the time, who cares? And so I was working on this book. I was ghostwriting the book, I'm pretty sure, or maybe I was editing something from her notes, one of those situations. And I'd sent her off the thing and I'd said to her, I'd given her plenty of warning, as I had to all my clients, I'm going on vacation. I was going to visit my family in the Caribbean. I'm going to be off my computer for 2 weeks. Now, I never really expected I would be, but I planned on not communicating too much over email. And I get an email from her saying X, Y, and Z edits. Will you do them for me? And again, like normal, she had this kind of, they need to be done right now. Like it was an utter emergency. And I used to always take that on. Have you ever taken that on? Like when someone's like, oh my God, this is an emergency. Yes. And it's like, you take that on like it's your emergency and because it's their priority, but you have your own priorities. So you have to learn to defend that. But anyway, I took it on and I was like, okay, I'm feeling really bad. So I emailed her and I said, look, I understand these are an emergency. As you know, I'm on vacation. I will do them the moment I get back. If you would like me to do them on vacation, we can make that happen, but it's going to cost you more because I'm on vacation and you had warning. And her response was really where this started. She responded and she said, you know what, Sarah, your work has been subpar for over a year. I never pointed it out to you. And now I want to point it out to you because you're basically, she was like, you're getting a big head. And I didn't respond right away. Let's be honest. I was pissed. My normal reaction would have been like, can I curse on your thing? You fucking bitch. What are you fucking saying? Like, my work's amazing. I remember when my boyfriend told me I didn't smell good and I got so pissed. I was like, it was like that. I was so pissed, but I didn't respond right away. I was like, why is she saying this? And my logic brain kicked in. You know, we always do that. We're like, I want to respond logically to every single point she made in her email.
Yeah.
So I start responding logically to every point. And the one that I remember really responding to was, if my work has been subpar for over a year, you should have said it sooner. Why are you saying it now?
Yeah.
Right? That's logical.
Yeah.
It should be pretty obvious to all you guys that we are not having a logical conversation at this point. She's saying that to me. It's already not logical. And me responding logically is really just retaliation that's going to get a reaction out of her. Didn't think about it like that though. And of course I got a reaction. And it went around like that for a little while until I finally could get the conversation back under control. And honestly, it ended in a go with love situation. I finished that project and I left her. Okay. But I couldn't understand at the time why I was getting the reactions from her, why she was seeming to say things that to me seemed out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Okay. That's story number one. Story number two is similar, but it's on a personal level. I was dating this guy for 4 years. Like, I think I've told you the story. I was dating this guy for 4 years. And we, you know, went to bed one night. Had a time difference about 5 hours. I went to bed one night to good night, baby, love you. And I woke up the next morning to, can I talk to you when you have a minute? No, baby, no, I love you. Again, didn't really think it was weird. I just thought he was having a bad day. And he calls me later in the day and he starts talking. And I remember thinking, I was driving at the time. And I remember thinking, wouldn't it be funny if he broke up with me? Now, I didn't actually think it was going to happen. But I remember having a very lucid thought like that. And then when he called and he starts talking, I'm like, oh my God, are you really actually dumping me right now? And I tell this story because what he actually said on the phone made no sense to me. He listed like 1 or 2 different reasons for why we needed to break up that were things that we had already settled. We had made plans for like the 3 or 4 reasons he gave. You know, it was children, it was marriage, it was moving, etc. And we had actually sat down and planned out all those things multiple times. So I couldn't understand why he was saying this. And what actually happened was I called a friend of mine who's a life coach and I said, yo, can you translate this? And he could. This man translated it in 3 minutes. And that's when I realized I had a problem with communication, that he could see when I knew this man for 4 years, that my friend could see what had actually happened communication wise, that he could read what this man had said to me without knowing anything about him. That's when I realized I had a huge problem. So between those 2 stories, I like made it my mission, not to be like diva about it, but I made it my mission to not learn just how to communicate, but like why we communicate the way that we do and why sometimes words aren't really where it's happening.
Yeah.
And why sometimes our reaction to respond in a logical way, right? Because you better believe I sat there and was like, okay, that's illogical. That's illogical. And I said it to him. Obviously that got a reaction the same way it did with my client. So why is it that when there are things that I personally want to say, or any of you guys listening want to say, you know, why are they not coming across to the other person in the way that you need it to, right? Why is our empathy not getting translated? Why are they not hearing us? And that's kind of what I want to talk about, because anytime that shit happens, whether it's in your personal life or with clients, it's either you're not hearing what the other person is really trying to say because they don't know how to communicate. And I'm not talking to them. I'm only talking to you guys. So I can only help you. Or it's because what you are really trying to say is not coming across. They're just not able to hear it because your empathy is not being translated. And I know you guys are all empathetic. If you're listening to Brooke, you're probably really good at what you do. And you were just dying for more people to know that you're good at what you do. And it's not that you're a terrible person who's trying to trick thousands into giving you money. That's probably true, right? I think
yes, that's definitely true.
Okay, good.
If that is you and you snuck in, you can leave.
Bye. Go with love. You fucking, no, I'm just kidding. I was trying to tie it into the client story and it's not working. Okay. Anyway, so recently, and this is like the other thing, I heard a coach say this yesterday or 2 days ago, a friend of mine, she goes, it's really hard to be judgy to another person when you really understand what's going on for someone. Yeah. And that's what this is about. Right? Because anytime we're getting reactive, it's usually because we didn't get it and we feel rejected, not because the other person actually did anything really wrong. They might have been mean or disrespectful, but the question's always why. Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to go through some like simple kind of tips and information. I'm really going to try to ground it, because the big thing here is that we can talk about concepts all day long, but if we don't know what it really looks like in the world, it's not going to do us any good. Mm-hmm. And I'll talk more about that in a second. So my first piece of advice, my loves, is to stay calm. Okay. That's really stupid. Or maybe simple, not stupid. But the first piece of advice, not stupid. Yeah, the first piece of advice is to stay calm. 2 big reasons for this is because our natural reaction when shit happens, when like when you get a client email that's like, I want to quit, or when you get like a potential client saying no, or I can't afford it, or actually a really mean like YouTube comment, like, oh my God, I heard Rachel Bloom say today that she got a comment once that said, her face looks like her butt stinks. Right. And she was like sitting there on the Jimmy Kimmel show, like trying to baffle over, like, what does that mean? It was really funny. Like, so when you get comments like that, your first reaction is to get pissed. Yeah. Why do we get pissed? We take it personally. Mm-hmm. Always we take it personally, which is understandable. It's totally understandable, but it's never about you. It's never about you. And if it's, especially if it's your client or potential client saying something like that, the communication's failing with them, it's really not about you. It's really, really, really not about you, because when you're the coach or the client or the leader, I was going to say expert, I gave it away, but when you're the coach or the expert, you're the leader. And it's really important that you stay in that space. So you got to stay calm. If that means removing yourself for a few minutes and responding later, that's important. Do it. But do whatever you have to do to stay calm so that you can't take it personally and so that you're not reacting. Which leads me to my second point. People act out of reciprocity.
Okay.
What does that mean? So if I react, if Brooke says something really mean to me and I'm like processing right in front of her, I'm going to react, right? Like if you were like, Sarah, your face looks like your butt stinks. I'm going to be like, well, your hair looks like it's Medusa's. That was a terrible one. I don't know where I got that. I was like trying to think of one without insulting you, but I feel really bad. But people act out of reciprocity. So it just means that anytime you walk into a room, people are responding to the way that you walked into the room. You cannot act alone. There's no situation on the planet where you're not in relationship with everything else. There's none. That's a really macro concept, but especially when we're talking about you talking to your clients or you talking to your potential clients, people are responding to the way that you speak and people are responding to the way that you talk. They're acting out of reciprocity. So if you start reacting to what they said, two things: either they're really being petty, whether consciously or unconsciously, and they're trying to get you to like react, right? Sometimes people do that as like a test. They like poke you to see if you're going to react. And anyone who reacts is no longer a leader. Would you trust me if you like poked me? Like, let's do this. Okay. Let's say I'm a life coach and a lot of what I do is life coaching in some sense. Okay. And I have a client who's in front of me and she's having like a really hard time believing that, her partner's not going to leave her. Let's say that's not the kind of life coaching I do. Okay. But let's say that's what's happening. And she's trying, and I'm saying, no, your partner's not going to leave you. And she goes, she fucking is, Sarah. She fucking is, Sarah. And she's like yelling at me. If I went, oh my God, you're right, I give up. Am I creating the safe space that she needs in order to build trust in her relationship? No. Right? Like if I react and respond to what she's throwing at me, I am no longer the leader here.
Yeah.
Now, let's say instead I say, why do you think that? And I stay calm and I present a space where I can kind of mirror back to her what's happening. Because she acts out of reciprocity, I basically just handle that situation. I'm still the leader. You can rail against me all you want and I'm not going to move. Right? People are acting out of reciprocity. I'm really sorry. It's like Sunday night and everyone gets really happy in the beach town that I live in. So if you hear shouting, that is what's happening. Everyone's out having fun. Everyone pop a bottle for me. There are some ways that this shows up, right? So I'm sure you guys have probably heard people talk about like masculine versus feminine energy or like attachment theory. This is kind of what I'm talking about, right? The reaction begets the reaction. When we're talking about like shit hitting the fan, we're talking about, to really oversimplify it, we're talking about the leader versus the client. Okay. If the client rails against me, I am not under any circumstances going to respond logically to them, because logic is really a trick in this instance. Let's go back to my original client story, right? She goes, Sarah, your work's been subpar for a year. And my reaction was to argue the point. I saw her say this line, so I responded to that line. I saw her say this line and I responded to that line, but that wasn't the way to go about it because she just did the same thing back to me.
Yeah.
A better response would have been, well, why are you saying that? Not why are you saying that now, or why do you think my work's subpar, but why are you saying that? Because she obviously wasn't saying that because it actually was true, or maybe it was true, but she wasn't saying that because of anything that was happening. It seems like a tangent compared to what was actually the situation, right? So if I had actually changed what I'd said, she wouldn't be reacting to me the whole way, okay?
Yeah.
The other way that this plays out is I think of sales calls. A lot of times we will inadvertently, has anyone ever done this where you go, well, I think you're a great fit for my work. And they go, cool, tell me about your program. And you're like, well, you'd be a really great fit. I have 2 programs on my books at the moment. So I could go like this. You'd be a really great fit for either book paying clients or creative biz for real. It really depends on what you think. Has anyone ever done that?
I've done that.
Either one is fine. Like you decide. And sometimes we do it because we're like, I don't want to make them, buy the bigger program if it's too much money for them. Right. Like I don't want to hear no. So I'm going to make the easy decision and let them decide. Yeah. Right. But basically for whatever reason we're doing it, we're kind of taking the easy way out.
Yeah.
We're kind of like, okay, we'll wait for them to step up and decide. But what I just did was I made the client the leader. Yeah. Is that a safe space? Is the client going to trust you? Are they going to be able to rail against you and act out of reciprocity and be the client and trust in the situation? Fuck no. Don't wait for the client to lead because you are the leader. Yeah. That's really, really, really important. And anytime that shit happens, it's usually because the client doesn't trust that you're the leader. Whether consciously or unconsciously, they're railing against, it's not always true, but they're often railing against you to see if you move because they think you might.
Okay. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah. I had a client not that long ago, actually. Actually, I've had 2 clients do this. Interesting. Well, I won't tell that part, but I had 2 clients do this, similar situation. And one reacted very differently than the other one. What happened was both of them said basically the same thing. They emailed me. I think it was an email for both of them one day and said, you know what? I think I want to quit. I think, and one of them gave like a financial responsibility as her reason. And the other one just said it was still financial responsibility, but it was a little bit more fear-based. She was a little bit more, I don't think it's working. So I want to quit before I lose everything, basically. Mm-hmm. And to both people, I questioned it. Now, I wasn't mean about it. I was like, oh, if you really want to quit, I understand. But as your coach, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't just for a second hold space and ask as a mirror here and say whatever I said. I was like, is this really what you want? Why are you worried about it now? What's coming up for you right now, et cetera, et cetera. If I had just let them get away with it, now to be like really selfish about it, I would have lost money in both cases. Yeah. And in one case I did because it was the right decision for her. But if I had just like let them get away with it, not only would I lost money, but they would have lost the space that they trusted so much. Mm-hmm. Right. And so it's not about like, oh my God, shit happens. I'm going to panic now. And how can I make sure I keep them? It's about, oh my gosh, shit happens. How can I now hold this space so that they can rail against it however they need to? Mm-hmm. Right. And that's what I mean by people acting out of reciprocity. People are going to respond to the kind of space that you hold when they walk into your room. Mm-hmm. And when we're talking about your businesses, then you are the space. Like they're coming into your space and you need to be that strong big box for them. Yep. This also, there's another weird thing about people acting reciprocity. This also means, and this one's hard for me, it means owning up to your mistakes or not owning up to not your mistakes. Here's the examples. Okay. Hold on. I don't think I had one for owning up to your mistakes. Let me think of an instance where I've owned up to my mistakes. Actually, well, okay, I'm not going to say the name, but there's someone that we all know who I made a mistake when I quoted a price to them. This is kind of embarrassing. Mm-hmm. But I was like, I was working on behalf of somebody else as a sales representative, and I was having this conversation. It was going really, really well. And I was like, and they were like, well, can you cut me a deal on, said program, like blah, 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 blah. And she said the deal and I listened to it and it sounded perfectly right to me. And I was like, yeah, I'm sure that's fine. We'll get that for you. We'll get that for you. So then I go talk to the person whose program it is. And I was like, hey, like there's a deal on this thing, right? Can I give that to her? And she was like, no, like that's not a thing. Like you got to go tell her no. And I was like, crap, fuck, like now I'm going to hear a no, like, damn it, I really messed up. And I felt actually really awful. And part of me wanted to run away and like, be like, oh, I don't, cause there are situations where you might go like, oh, it's not my mistake. It's her mistake. Like, it's not my fault. It's like, oh, the deal's over now. Or like, oh, the paper's printed wrong. Like I could have easily blamed it on someone else, but I was like, no, I can't do that. Cause I'll ruin the trust. Right? Yeah. And then if shit did happen in that communication, it's still going to go wonky. Right. I have to, in order to keep the lines of communication as clear as you can, you got to own up to your shit. So I walked up to the woman and I was like, look, I made a mistake. Here's blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I take responsibility for this and I'm going to do what I can to support you to the better decision. And if there's something I can do to make up for it, we're going to figure that out too. And I tried to do whatever I could to kind of like, be like, this is literally my fault. And how can we fix it? Here's another example. Someone tried to tell me once, and it was a client, former client, I should say. Someone tried to say once that, I had misquoted her on like a strategy, like that she'd put together like a Facebook ad with a funnel or this kind of thing or whatever. And she'd never sent me the copy. She had only said to me kind of vaguely what the situation was. And I said, well, do you want me to read it? She goes, no, I've got this. I did what you said to do and it's all sorted. And I was like, are you sure? Like sometimes when we think we've implemented something, we actually haven't. We only understood the theory and we don't really know what it looks like on the ground. She goes, no, I got it. I was like, okay. And then she didn't do well. The funnel didn't do well. She lost, 150. It wasn't too much, but it was a significant amount of money. And she's like, Sarah, like this is because your thing didn't work. And I was like, my instant reaction was to say, I'm sorry. Has anyone ever done that? You like go, oh, I'm sorry. Like, cause you feel bad. And I always want to like express the emotion. I'm like, oh, I feel bad, but that doesn't do anyone any good because if we're talking about shit hitting the fan of communication, the word I'm sorry to somebody else going to sound like you're apologizing. Mm-hmm. Just because you're trying to express your empathy doesn't mean you're apologizing. And in that instance, I caught myself. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that happened. I did say I'm sorry, but I said, I'm so sorry that happened. What do you think happened? And we just had a conversation about feelings to the degree where we could figure out what happened. But it's very important to notice where you can step up and take ownership. And sometimes that's the simplest and scariest thing to do. Right? Like when that client emailed me and was like, your work's subpar, like my reaction was to go, I'm sorry. Why? But I shouldn't have said I'm sorry. Because in that instance, here's the thing, as I would have taken ownership if, I hate to say it in this way, but if she could show me where my work had been subpar. Right? Like I was very willing to listen to her and say, okay, cool. Where do you think that this didn't go well? Okay, cool. I can see that. I'm sorry about that instance. Let's see what we can do to repair it. But instead my reaction was to go, I'm sorry, but like in kind of a taking ownership, like diva sort of way. Right. So it's very important to notice where you need to own up to your mistakes. Again, sometimes the simplest thing to do, and where you don't need to take on other people's shit.
Yeah.
A lot of times when communication falls fucking apart, it's not your fault. So stop taking stuff on. This is back to like attachment theory. Have we heard about that? Has anyone ever talked about that in your group, Brooke?
Not in this group. No.
Not in this group. Okay. So I won't go too into it, but there's a really big concept in attachment theory that when I am attached to something, when I'm like emotionally like, this is really important and I want it to stick around, one pattern of attachment is to take on all the other person's crap. Because if I can take it on, they're going to stick around because I can save them. Right. So we need to be very wary of like, I don't need to take on this crap that's wrong unless it is actually my fault, because I don't need to keep this person around. Yeah. Okay. Which is going to be a big theme in a minute. I'll come back to that. Okay. That was at people out of reciprocity. That was a big one. That was too much. Are there any questions on this, by the way, Brooke? I assume you're going to like tell me if someone's like,
yeah, I will. Like, and guys, feel free to put in any questions as we go. Like we've got some comments, like Jillian's saying yes to boundaries. And so guys, put in questions as you have them. And then if anyone has any questions on the replays too, let us know.
Boundaries is such a weird one, actually. I want to riff on this for a second because I think, boundaries is so important, and boundaries, like priorities, even self-care are big things that we talk about in our space these days. And, a lot of people, when they say boundaries, I think different groups of people hear different things. I think some people go, okay, like I need to take space for myself, and kind of almost like I'm going to shut all the walls and like not take people on. And there's a good energy to that too. Sometimes it has a negative energy to it, but let's assume it's good. And a lot of people have, sort of like, oh, I can't say no to people. And I think in either case, my thought on boundaries is pretty simple. It's not about you shutting the world out. It's about you noticing that you don't have to overgive in order to keep people around. There's nothing that you need to sacrifice in order to keep people around. I think for business owners, that's really big because we often have a sense of, I need to work harder in order to get farther, which is true to some degree, but working harder is exhausting, right? And so is keeping around clients or even friends that require a lot of your energy. That's exhausting. And so it has this sense of like, well, I only have so much in me. Yeah. So I don't want to take on new people. I don't want to take on people I'm not sure about. I don't want to take on new clients. I don't even want to take on that new business venture because there will be a point where I'll be so exhausted that I won't be able to keep any of it. And boundaries has that sense of like, I'm going to give and give and give. And then I'm like, crap, I need a wall for a second. Okay. I'm refreshed. I'm going to give and give it. And I'm going to get a wall. And I don't think that we need that wall. I don't think we need boundaries the way that we talk about them a lot of times. Sometimes we do for, healing purposes. But I think a lot of it is switching our thought process from I need to give and give and give in order to have clients, or I need to give and give and give in order to have my business running, to I don't need to overgive. Just literally me talking is enough for most of my clients to fall in love with me. Now, I realize that's a little bit more coachy than it is, for people who do something like VAs and stuff like that. But there is still a point where, you can notice that it's not about overgiving in order to keep them around. And that's what I think the boundary conversation be about. What do you think, Brooke? Yeah,
I agree. I totally agree. Because like for me personally, that's been a huge issue especially when I first started out, like I have to just keep doing all this stuff all the time. And then it's like, fuck it, I'm done. It's too much.
Yeah.
I quit.
Oh my gosh, me too. And like attachment theory has like an interesting, take on what happens to someone when they get overwhelmed. What happens when you get overwhelmed? Your instant reaction for most of us is going to be to completely shut off and pull away. Yeah. And does that help your business? Does that help your clients? No fucking way. Right. So it's about noticing like, okay, am I going to get overwhelmed? Like, how can I shift this so that doesn't happen? And that's huge in communication too. Yeah. Right. And the other thing is a lot of times when we get, this is me, I get overwhelmed and then I try to communicate that. And if I'm attached to it, oftentimes the other person will hear it as, well, I don't want to be there for you anymore. And that's happened with clients, right? It's like, I'm overwhelmed. I'm going to take a step back for the weekend. But if my client is used to me being there every single day, they're going to hear that as, oh God, Sarah's going to abandon me at some point. Right. So it's about learning to have that conversation too, and being able to set those boundaries in a very loving way long before you get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Because that's actually how you stop hitting the fan in your communication, rather than just try to fix it once it happens.
Yeah. That's the ultimate goal, right?
That's the ultimate goal. Hopefully, like most of what I'm giving today will help you stop the shit from ever hitting the fan. But it'll also help you, once actually shit hits the fan, basically remember people act out of reciprocity rather, and don't react. That's the biggest thing. Because once shit hits the fan, you're caught in a reaction loop. And the only thing you can really do is cut that loop. Yep. That's all you can do. And you can only control yourself. Right. So I can't stop the other person from reacting, but I can stop railing against their reactions. Yeah. And that's either going to calm them down or it's going to make them leave. But either way, it'll stop the shit from happening. And that's what's really important. Yes. Because you don't want to get caught in that, because that's exhausting, and then you'll be overwhelmed and you won't be able to serve your other clients.
And then you'll go watch Netflix for 3 days if you're anything.
Exactly. And you'll play like Candy Crush. I've never done that, but I hear that's like the thing to get addicted to. I got really addicted to Wordscapes. I'm not kidding you. I've probably spent $100 playing that game, because you can buy like extra coins for like when you forget a letter. And I keep playing it when I'm tired. So when I'm tired, I can't think of the words. So I'm like, I need clues all the time. And I've probably given them $100. Like, they make a lot of money from me. So it's pretty upsetting, but also I love the game. So I'm okay with it. It's like, anyway. Okay. So principle number 3 we're at. So this one's funny. Okay. Using the perfect words does not help. I'm going to give an example. It used to drive me absolutely crazy. And I really got it in my head that it was an academic thing, because my ex-boyfriend never went to college. And he would always talk about how he never went to college and how I did. And so I got it in my head that he was stupid and he couldn't understand me. Now, I didn't really think he was stupid, but I just thought we had different languages. Okay. Because I have 3 degrees, 3 like postgraduate degree or whatever it's called, university degrees. I've been in school for like my whole life. I'm that person that like always like got straight A's in English without ever reading the book. I love fucking playing with words and ideas. Right. And so what that means is anyone come from academia where like you need to find the perfect word to describe what you're saying. Saying a full sentence to describe something in academia doesn't fucking suit it if there's one word that will fix it. Right? Like I can't even think of any of the words right now, but like you'd spend weeks trying to find the perfect word so that you could cut your word count down by like 300 words. Right? And then there's like the whole playing, like you see like one word, like I remember the word ambiguity. We wrote essays on just that one word. So that's academia, right? So me and my ex-boyfriend would sit down and we would try to have a discussion about like a concept or maybe a fight or something like that. And I'd be like sitting there working so hard to say the right fucking thing, because I was convinced if I could say it perfectly, then he would hear me and understand it. That's what would happen in academia, but he couldn't understand what I was fucking saying. So we would get in this like fight loop because I was using the perfect words and he was probably thinking he was using the perfect words and I didn't get his words because he wasn't using mine, et cetera, et cetera. So the perfect words don't help. A way that we say this in sales is we say, use their words when you offer your program. Anyone ever heard that one? When we're talking about sales calls, we say, make sure you're listening and writing down their words and describe your program in their words. Obviously, the caveat here is to make sure that their words actually do describe your program. Yeah. Right? But the perfect words do not help. And a lot of like a big, what's the word? Like problem or fault, or none of those are the right word. Isn't that funny that that's happening? Oh my God, I'm dying laughing. Anyway, a big thing that people like new coaches tend to fall into is when you realize your coach superpower, you start kind of seeing like the things that are happening for people under the surface everywhere you go. And you have this like really strong desire to tell people what's wrong with them. That's an oversimplified version of it, but we're like, oh my God, I know exactly what's going on for you right now. And it's a big problem because people don't like that.
Yeah. People don't.
Right. And that doesn't work. Right. Like if I got you on the phone, someone actually did this to me once where I got on the phone and I told them my problems. And in 3 sentences, she was offering me her program and saying it was perfect. And I didn't think it was. I was not convinced. I was like, okay, bye, and hung up the phone, and she lost the sale. And the reason is because she didn't hear me. And she was trying to use like the perfect words to describe my situation. Using the perfect words has a little bit of like this energy to it. Like I'm going to put me on you. Right. I'm going to make sure that my explanation for you makes sense to me. And that doesn't work.
Yeah.
So anytime you catch yourself, and again, it's a reactive quality a little bit, you know, it's me trying to make sure that you're really hearing me. I don't think you're listening. So I'm going to really respond. You know, it's not working. So the biggest thing is to listen. How do I think I could have fixed, not that I'm saying I wanted to in either situation, in both cases of my ex-boyfriend and my old client, it was better that they left with love. But how could I have fixed either of the situations really easily? I could have said, what's really going on right now?
Yeah.
What are you really trying to tell me?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the thing of it is I don't think in either case would I have gotten a straight answer. So you have to be willing to not use the perfect words and not just listen, but you have to be willing to sit there for a few minutes while they figure it out. Because when someone gets into a reactive mode, they actually forget what the real problem is.
Mm-hmm.
They are literally blocking it. If your client comes to you with shit and you're like, oh my God, this shit just hit the fan. How do I deal with this? Chances are is they've really convinced themselves that the thing they're saying to you is the problem. Mm-hmm. And so when you say to them, what's the real problem here? And you sit there and listen, don't expect them to say it in the first sentence. You have to be patient enough to listen until you really, really get to the real answer. Do you think that's true, Brooke?
I definitely think it's true.
Yeah.
Be patient enough I'm typing this stuff in as you go.
Oh, thanks. You're like my little PowerPoint.
Yeah. Be patient.
Person.
No, I totally agree. And I'm thinking like, obviously client stuff comes up from back when I first started, but I'm thinking like personal relationships too. Like,
it's a lot of personal relationship stuff.
That one comes up a lot there. Like you totally forget what the problem is. Like the problem's not that you didn't unload the dishwasher.
Yeah. That's never the issue. That's a perfect example. That's a perfect example. So she's like railing against me that my work has been subpar for a year. And it's really obvious that that's not the issue. And yet when your husband really pisses you off, you're like, oh my God, would you just fucking empty that? And you completely overreact.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait, no, why am I? It's a lot of other things that are happening. And usually it's a feeling. Yeah. Like usually it's not the other person and it's not their problems. It's like, I just don't feel like this feeling is being expressed and I'm going to put it out there. Like in the case of clients, a lot of times clients, this is why it's kind of cool being a coach, because you can much more easily stay calm and not take things personally because it's not you. It's like their husband or their business or their whatever. But it's sometimes you take it personally. And so, if someone's like railing against you, it's really easy to kind of sit there and be like, okay, like what is really the problem? Okay, I hear you on that, but like, why are you feeling that way? Is it really this event or is it something else? Like that feeling's been there for a while. And now these events are kind of starting to make you think that they're related, even though they're not. But in personal relationships, it's a lot harder to see that. And the reason I believe is because you're more attached, right? If I'm really, really attached to something, I'm a lot more reactive because I'm a little more worried it's going to leave me.
Yeah.
Right. And so like in my personal relationships, I'd be a lot more quick to be like, you're stupid, or like something where I like kind of rail against it because I'm convinced that the guy is going to leave me. That's kind of like an over dramatic thing, but that's really the truth. And so, with your clients, anytime you notice yourself being reactive, just ask yourself, like, why am I actually really being so reactive to the shit that they're saying right now? Why am I taking this so personally? And usually if you dig a little bit, it's because there's something about you that you're questioning or about whether they're going to stick around that you're questioning. Actually, this is perfect because it leads me to the next point. So what I heard a coach once say, and Brooke, I think you know this person, she said, I will ask every question I know how to ask. And I will address any weirdness that I hear when I hear it. And I will not walk away from a sales or coaching conversation until I'm absolutely sure that I've asked, addressed, and done all that I can, because it doesn't do me any good not to know. And really what she's saying with that is that it's not a personal thing. If my job is to make sure that my client gets what she needs, and if it's my job to hold space while my potential client figures out what she needs, then it is my job to not take things personally. And it's my job to not get overly attached.
Yeah.
I can be attached to my spare time. I can go cry to my boyfriend and be like, oh my God, I think my client's going to quit. It's so sad. But I can't do it in the space with her.
Right.
Because it's really important that I'm unattached, not because I don't want you to love your clients, but because when I'm attached, I'm taking personal meaning from this and I'm taking it on, and I can't do that because as soon as I do that, I start reacting.
Yep.
So you can't be afraid to separate that thing, not because you don't love your clients, but because you love them so much that you don't want to react.
Yeah. And Debbie just asked that question that I think you just answered perfectly. She said, how do you keep from reacting? So hopefully Sarah just answered it perfectly.
That could easily ask the question, how do you disattach?
Yeah.
Like I could see someone asking me that question too. So if there's anyone else asks a question differently than what I'm about to say, but how do you keep from reacting? Yeah, you unattach. And really what I'm asking you to do is it's not to not love your clients. What I'm actually asking you to do is to not, hold on. I have this phrase that I love saying, and I don't think people understand me when I say it. I say, you don't change no matter the energy of anyone around you. And what I really mean by that is that we actually do change very drastically. I already told you, I think people act out of reciprocity. But what I mean by that is that your core and your value and your worth and who you are on the deep down level does not fucking change no matter the energy of anyone around you. What that really means is that there's nothing anyone else can say that will change whether you are valuable and worthy. And the way that you don't get reactive and the way that you disattach is to work really hard. Now, I don't want you to work too hard, okay? But I want you to like be very conscious of reminding yourself how fucking worthy you are and how your clients are not going to ever take that away. If they quit, they quit. It was probably the best decision for them at the time, and you can love them anyway. There's nothing that any of them can say that's going to question your worthiness. That's really what that means, because I'm only ever going to get reactive if I feel like I need to defend myself on some level. And the only reason I would think I would need to defend myself is if I thought I was in danger.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to notice that you're not in danger. It's kind of a personal thing. It's a personal healing, personal growth, personal grit sort of thing, because otherwise I can't do it. And this is another reason why there's kind of two reasons to this, but a lot of business coaches, I suggest, get mindset coaching or have a personal life coach. And the reason is because of what I just said. Yeah. You need to have such a strong sense of your own self-worth that's kind of unshakable. Not that it will never shake, but you need to be a little bit stronger. And that when it does shake, you have someone to lean back and help you heal it really quickly so that it doesn't affect stuff. But also because you deserve as strong a foundation to process your own shit so that you can stand there and be a leader for your people.
Yeah.
If I'm sitting here like processing personal shit in front of you guys, do you think I'm going to hear everything you say? No. There's no fucking way. I'm going to be distracted. And I'll probably be a little reactive. And if one of you probably without even meaning to, pokes at one of the holes in my armor right now, I would probably turn into like a pouncing tiger or something, because I'm going to react out of survival because you just like attacked me or it felt like that.
Yeah.
Right. So it's really important. That's really how you make sure you're not reactive, is that you go explore your own self-worth and be so firm in it that nothing anyone says is going to change that. Does that answer that question?
I think it does. Debbie, let us know if you have any follow-up, but I think that's perfect. I even put a little heart next to it when I typed it in.
Oh,
I love it. I love how you said that.
Oh, yay. Okay, so that leads me to, what point are we on? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so point number 4. I actually had that coach quote under number 4, but here's the thing, okay? These two go hand in hand. You cannot be afraid of saying the truth. You can't be afraid of saying the truth. A lot of times when communication falls apart, we are very ready to say whatever it is that's going to stop the confrontation. Sometimes because we're afraid, that someone's going to like poke at the one thing that we think is going to hurt the most, everything we just talked about. But sometimes it's like, I just don't want to deal with this. Like, I don't think this is worth fighting about. I'll give you an example. God love her, but I have a friend who is very reactive sometimes, especially I've noticed when she's very tired. Now, I say this with so much love. I really have so much respect for this person. I don't even think she knows she does this. But I've seen her a few times like react, like, and again, it's kind of the thing where you say something that makes absolutely no sense. One time she said to me, she was like, you never remember, I think it was like my birthday or something. And I was like, her birthday had been the week before and I had her present, but it was at my house because I didn't know we were going to meet up that night. And I was like, wait, I don't understand. I called you on your birthday. I have the birthday. Like, I couldn't understand why she was saying it. It's that kind of stuff. Right. And it's obviously that's not the problem.
Yeah.
Anyway, and every time that something like that happened, they were always little things. So my thing was always to go, oh, I'm sorry. You're right. And I took it on. Now, should I probably do that? Probably not. But I was doing it because it was small little things. It was never big. Like, it was never in my brain worth fighting about. And I was willing to say whatever it took to make the confrontation stop. Because I was like, fuck that. I don't want to fight about this. Right. But here's the thing. There was one time where it actually was a really big deal. Understandably, right? Because she got in this habit of when she says such and such, I say such and such. And so we got in this little pattern. And so the thing started getting bigger and bigger. And I kind of got annoyed, but I still didn't say anything. And one night it was very big, the thing that she said to me. And I was like, you know what? No, that's not the truth. I'm not apologizing for that. And she was like, and it turned into a reaction very quickly. Now, if I had not like been afraid of saying the truth originally, I like to think that it might not have been a big deal at that moment. I don't know that. Yeah. Right. But I can't be afraid of saying the truth because I want the confrontation to be over.
Yeah.
Especially, that's a friend. And I like to think I hold space for my friends, but especially when we're talking about clients.
Yeah.
If I'm not telling my clients the truth, they're not going to get results. Whether they realize that I'm doing it or not, they're probably, at least on an unconscious level, going to stop trusting me. You can tell. People can tell. People are like psychic. Everyone thinks that they're not psychic. I think everyone's psychic. It's just whether you're blocked to it or not. Right? People can tell when something's wrong and you're not telling the truth. They're not going to get results. They're going to like not, the other thing is this, especially with my clients, because we work a lot with like concepts and then like actually implementing those concepts. And if I stop telling them the truth, they're going to start seeing on the ground that they're like, what they're saying is not grounding with people because I didn't choose to correct them at the, you know, at the right point. So you cannot be afraid of saying the truth.
Yeah.
Especially with clients. You're the leader. That's why you're there. That's why they fucking paid you.
Yeah.
You got to say the truth. It's so, so, so important. And here's the last part of this too. And I'm sure everyone's experienced this. I hope I get a giggle over it, but it's also really sad. When you go along with something that you don't like because you're like, oh, it's not a big deal. I'm just going to go with it. What happens?
You are resentful and
you are fucking resentful. You turn into like this little skeeving bitch the whole time. And you're like, rah, rah, rah. Like how many times have you taken on clients like pro bono or like for a discounted rate? And you're like, I'm going to feel fine about this. And then like 2 weeks in, you're like, she's fucking wasting my time. Like I can't even, and you get mean to a degree. It's because you feel so resentful because you didn't just own up and say the truth and act your full size when they first came to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's better for everybody involved if you just say the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fully agree.
Okay, cool. Only 2 more. The last 2 are kind of big ones though.
Okay.
Like big, like mind things. Okay. Here's the truth. I believe, and I said this at the beginning, that each one of you listening, if you're listening to Brooke, who I know is, this is true about you, Brooke, is empathetic and powerful and a leader and wants to communicate all of that to your people. If you've sat through me talking for 45 minutes, you probably have not paled at the idea of being a leader. So that's really important to me. Right. And so the issue, you know, if your communications are ever falling apart, or if you ever, you know, are having something where you're like, oh, I think it might fall apart, or any of this kind of nervousness around it, I'm going to argue that it's not that you're not empathetic and powerful and a leader, or that you want to be. It's that it's just not coming across. Right. It's not that you aren't. It's that, you know, all this gorgeous heart that you've got here, somehow when you say it out loud, it's like going like this. And like, people are like, wait, what was that? Like, I don't understand. Like, I thought you had this shape heart and now it looks like a fucking mess of yarn. Right. Like, that's really what it is. So like, for example, I had a client once, we were working on her sales process, her sales conversations. And for me, when I first heard her come to me, one of my biggest goals was to get her really solid on her sales conversations. So, you know, but, you know, obviously clients have their own ideas. So we were working on this bit and this bit and this bit, and it was good because she needed those foundations. But we get to sales conversations and I said, okay, how are your sales conversations? Because this is like the part I really want to talk about. I'm like, I want to see her script. I want to hear her do a role play. I want to know like what she's fucking saying on calls. I want to hear like a recording. I want to know so we can nail this. She goes, well, I'm doing a version of what you said to do, Sarah. And I'm like, I think it's working. And I'm like, she's like, I really think the problem is over here. You know, my price is wrong or something like that. And I was like, okay, cool. And I was like, I almost let her get away with it. And I was like, no. Like, tell me, what are you saying on the call? What do you say when it's time to say, I think you're good for my program, whatever it was. And just to give you an example, guys, of like how I teach sales calls, a lot of people will like, when it's time to offer your program, a lot of people will say, okay, cool. I think you're a great fit for this. And they'll describe the program. I don't do that. I say, okay, I think you're a great fit for working together. What do you think? And I wait for them to tell me what they think. And then I say, okay, cool. I've got a program just for you. It's called this. And I give them a really short description. And I say, do you want to hear more about it? And then I make the offer in like a few steps because I want to make sure that someone's actually interested before I look on them and waste all of our time.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like to be tricky or anything like that. I just want to get them being like, yeah, actually, I fucking want to work with you. I've been waiting for this for an hour. That's what I want. So I asked my client, I was like, cool, like, tell me what you say on your thing. And she was doing it like in one big fell swoop. And I was like, why are you doing that? She's like, well, you know, it took her 5 minutes to get to the point. And basically she was afraid that if she didn't say it all up front, someone would have a chance to say no before they knew what it was. And I was like, yeah, but they just sat on the phone with you for an hour. Like they're whether they're going to say yes or no is already in their brain. Yeah. It's not even about that. Like, you know, and we have this like fear that of being rejected that we'll lay it all on the line. Like people do this with like dates. Sometimes they'll write like my sister did it once. She wrote like a big long note, like on the back of her seat and gave it to the bartender. And I was like, I don't want to be mean, but like, he probably would have asked for whatever he wanted it. We had plenty of opportunity that he could have done that, but I was still proud of her. But it's situations like that. Like we're like so afraid that we'll be rejected that we try to lay it on the line. But really, to be honest, guys, what you're usually doing is you're guaranteeing your rejection more than anything else. And so when we switched her thing, we were like, oh, it worked more. What I'm really trying to say here is that my client understood the concept. She understood, you know, the process of making decision, as I call it. She understood the basic gist of like why the script for a sales call looked the way that it did. she understood what she needed to ask. She understood she needed to make the offer. She understood like, don't talk after your price, all those kind of principles we hear all the time. But she didn't understand how what she was actually saying was not translating what she really wanted to say. As in, she had this empathy. She wanted the program to work, but it wasn't coming across that way when she actually said it to her client. So a lot of times we think, and not to be mean, but this is one of my problems that comes across with the industry, the way that it's built. The industry at the moment is a lot of courses and programs, which I think are amazing, but there's not a lot of opportunities for feedback. And in fact, a lot of coaches and leaders shy away from giving feedback because they don't want to do the extra work, which is fine. I understand that in a lot of cases, but we have a system where we're learning a lot of information, and we have a lot of people who are walking around implementing that information and going, it doesn't work. The information obviously worked because it got so-and-so to the top, and now they're teaching it. It obviously fucking works. The question is, why isn't it working for you? And no, it's not because you're a failure and you're stupid. It's because you're not sure, for understandable reasons, how to translate this concept into reality, right? If we talk about like communications and like humans, we have a lot of coaches walking around with absolutely no empathy, or they have empathy, but they don't know how to translate it. And a lot of times like that concept to reality or empathy into reality is blocked, not to be mean, but it's usually blocked by like unhealed shit. For example, my client was very worried that she was going to be rejected. Yeah. Right. That can't shadow into translating my very clear and concise business concept into reality. That's something else we got to deal with completely, because it's coloring the way you're implementing stuff. Right. With empathy, a lot of times we're like, as we said earlier, we're worried about overgiving. And so sometimes we're guarded in how much empathy we give potential clients. Like, how much time do you give to potential clients? Sometimes we overgive. So then we like cut people off at the knees when they might be a good client, right? We're doing the seesaw. And it's because there's this other thing that, we haven't dealt with. And it's affecting the way that our empathy is actually being translated into the world. Am I making sense? This is very like conceptual talk.
No, I think that makes perfect sense.
Okay, cool.
I'm going to I feel like I'm going to go back and watch this one like 10 times, because I think there's so much stuff in here. I love it. It's so good.
More than one of my clients has said this to me before. She's like, I play your recording, like your videos and our coaching calls on in the background, like during the day as like inspiration. I was like,
that's so good. I totally believe that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the best way to like, because, with this one, it's a little bit harder to self kind of diagnose where it's going wrong. But here's my advice, right? If you're anywhere that we're talking about, taking either your empathy, like who you are and the embodiment of what you do, or a concept like sales strategies or marketing strategies or branding strategies, right? Ask yourself this question, like, what is it that you're in business for at that moment? Like, what's the purpose of this conversation? Or what is it, what's the purpose of this page? Or what is the purpose of this post? Or what's the purpose of me talking to the potential client? Really honest to God, like if the dream boat was existing and none of the things that coaches tell me to do mattered, why am I talking to this person, or why am I writing this page? Okay. And then how can you translate that into the situation? Right. A lot of times we think, oh, well, Sarah told me that I needed to get 5 more discovery calls this week, so I'm just going to like talk to as many people. I'm like, I don't fucking care if you get 5 discovery calls, as long as the conversations you're having are empathetic and nice. Yeah. Right. That does more. So what are you in business for, or what is the purpose of the thing that you're working on, and how can I really apply that to the situation and let that come across? Yes. Cool. Last point. This is very related. Okay. Information cannot change, orchestrate, or control a situation or a person. Okay. So a lot of times, I've just given like a lot of like concepts. I talked about attachment theory, masculine, feminine, leader versus all this other like information, right? A lot of times, and I do this all the time. For example, when someone first told me about attachment theory, I took it as personality types, and I was trying to figure out how like me and my boyfriend fit together. I was like, okay, if I do this, then he'll do this. And I was like, I had asked for the information in order to try to understand where he was coming from a little bit more. And I caught myself using it to try to change the situation and to try to change him. Crazy. Right. And as I say that, you guys are probably like, oh yeah, Sarah, that was dumb. But like in the moment, it didn't feel like that. I'm not gonna lie to you. I thought I was being really like empathetic, but really I was just fixing. So a lot of times we fall into fixing mode when we get information. We're like, cool, now I see what it is. I'm aware of the problem. How can I use this info to orchestrate the situation or to control how my client responds? Or how can I like fix all of this? Right. Yeah. It's a really natural response, especially when shit hits the fan, because we get worried that it means something about us, or our relationship with our client or our relationship with our partner or anything like that.
Yeah.
And here's the truth is that information can't change. It can't orchestrate. It can't control. It can only be used to understand and be aware of my own reactions. That's it. And yes, people act out of reciprocity. So that does mean that if I'm aware of my own reactions and I act differently, it's very likely that the other person will act differently too. But I cannot do it because I want the other person to act differently. Because as soon as I do that, I'm orchestrating and I'm trying to control.
Yeah.
And that's not why your clients come to you.
Yeah.
They don't come to you to be another puppet on strings. They are puppets in other people's businesses. And you know that's true. How many people do you know that are like, literally they come to you after they've worked with like 16 other people for whom they have been puppets?
Mm-hmm.
I've had so many clients go through like really big, like marketing programs or like really famous, like, you know, I wish I could say names of like the biggest programs these people have dropped tens of thousands of dollars on. Yeah. Right. And they always come to me saying two things. It didn't work. And they just told me keep trying. Right. And so like, it has a complete air of they weren't listening to me. I was just another puppet in their thing. They just wanted me another testimonial. And that's not why your clients come to you. They come to you because they want the empathy that they can feel coming across in your branding and in your messaging. Yeah. And so if we start using the information that I've shared today to like try to control that, or if I start using this information to try to change my reactions so that they will change theirs and the way they're behaving, it missed the point.
Yeah.
All I can do is change my reactions and be that leader and be that big space and see how they respond. They are either going to react differently and you guys are going to have an amazing situation and the shit's going to completely evaporate and be amazing, or they're going to leave. Mm-hmm. And the shit will be over and it won't be a big deal anymore because you didn't take it personally, or you went to your coach and you processed it so you wouldn't have to take it personally anymore.
Yeah.
Right. So even though people act out of reciprocity, it still doesn't mean that I can control them. I can only respond differently and then see how they respond. And again, this is a big mistake that a lot of new coaches make. To go back to the last thing, right? A lot of times we're like, oh my God, I see it now. I know how to act and I'm going to get my boyfriend to finally say, I love you. Like, that's insane. I can't control another person. And you don't want to. Right. Like your clients are going to amaze you when you respond to these shitty situations differently. Yeah. Some of them are absolutely going to make you cry with their reactions and the way that they respond to you being a strong leader. Those are the stories you're in business for. Yeah. And you couldn't make that shit up if you tried. Like, here's the thing I think about is like, anytime, you know, I love like film and I love theater and I love anything where I'm not the only one creating, which is ironic because I really love having total control. But I've always loved that stuff because that's the kind of shit that I couldn't come up with on my own. There's no way that if it was just me, would any of that stuff come to fruition? Not just because I'm too lazy to implement it, as you guys can tell with the lack of PowerPoint slides, but also like there's ideas flowing around that like I couldn't even make up if I cried. And I have so many stories from like working in situations like that just blew me away. And it was only for being in the present moment and only not trying to control that any of those could come about. Yeah. So you're totally the leader. You can totally take it back control in a shitty situation. You can totally prevent shitty situations, but don't fall into the trap of trying to control because that's not what you want anyway. Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Cool. I love it. That's amazing. So good. I seriously, like, I wasn't kidding. I feel like I'm going to go watch this one like 10 times. There's so much good stuff in there. I'm so glad. That's so amazing. I love it. Cool. Okay. Any big questions? Yeah. So let me scroll back through. If anyone has any questions, any other questions, now is the time. We mostly just got a lot of comments like, yes, I'm doing that too. Absolutely. Okay. Guilty. Oh, no. Yeah. So if anyone does have any questions, now is the time. Everything that I've shared, by the way, like I've done the wrong version of. Oh yeah. Me like too. Before anyone thinks that like you're the only one that Sarah's calling out right now, like I've literally done and some of them very recently, like the using the attachment theory to control, like we're talking like last week, like don't think that I'm under, like, this is the big thing too, is that like, it's easy to talk about concepts to a degree. It's easy to talk about information. And I think to a degree, I don't know if you agree, Brooke, and it's not to call out the industry, but I think to a degree, that's why there's so many programs and there's so many people who are not creating content and programs and courses and stuff that are really helping people implement because they don't actually know how to do it. Yeah. You know, they've figured out the information and they're really good at communicating it. And they might have even gotten some of their clients really good results because their clients are really good at implementing it. But there's a lot of people out there that don't know how to do this. you know? So it's like easy for me to stand up here and talk about this, but like, know that it's harder in the moment. It's really hard in the moment. And it all comes from like awareness. And it comes from like, you know, when shit does happen, it's like, okay, well, how much ownership of this am I going to take? How can I make sure that I have a space to process this and then to respond rather than react and all that kind of stuff. It's just like, it's like taking time for yourself to like take a deep breath. And I heard someone say this once. It was a friend of mine and I heard her say it. And at the time I was kind of like, okay, yeah, obviously, but it didn't hit me until later. She said, I used to work in the ER as a nurse. And she goes, what you realize in the ER, or what you don't realize, I think she said before, what you don't realize until you worked in the ER is that there's very little in life that's actually an emergency. Now that's probably obvious because like we didn't all just, not to be morbid, we didn't all just get hit by a car or hit by a bus or something like that. That's like, we're literally on death's line, but this kind of stuff will feel like you are about to be annihilated. That's why we react the way we do.
Yeah.
And it feels like a survival thing. And if you can recognize that you are feeling that way in that moment, like, oh my God, my survival is being threatened, you'll realize why you're reacting. And you can kind of go, wait, hold on. No, Sarah, you're fine. It's not going to be the end of your life, you know?
Yeah.
So that's really important to remember too.
Yeah, definitely. That's it. Yeah. My husband's a police officer, so I
I remember that.
It's helped me a lot for that reason. Like that exact same thing. I never really thought about it like that, but you know, before he, you know, got that job, it was totally different. And now I'm like, okay, this doesn't matter. I mean, it matters, but it doesn't matter.
It doesn't. And I mean, like, not to be like weird about it, but like very few people are actually like at the end of the rope ever going to be like homeless, destitute on the street. But the thing is that even if that did happen, there's plenty of places to help you. You know, like you still have friends, you still have everyone in this group, you still have like people you could reach out to. Like if you were really like in trouble and you were brave enough to ask for support, there's not a chance that you wouldn't find it.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's true.
I agree.
But I understand that it can be scary in the moment. So if you need a hug, always feel free to come over to my page and ask for one.
Yeah.
I'll give you hug gifts.
Yay. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. This has been
welcome.
Totally awesome. I'm going to watch it again. And anyone watching the replay, if you have any questions, let us know. This has been freaking amazing. And thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. I love it. Yay. All right. I will be back in here soon for Thirsty Thursday, probably before that because that's a long way away. But I will talk to you guys soon. Bye, Sarah. Thank you.